I'm Pierre Conti. I'm the director of product at Meedan, and yeah, I'm here to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing with the organization to deploy efforts to fact check on WhatsApp and other messaging services. A little bit more about Meedan in some context. We are technology non-profit. We're global. The team is really distributed all around the world. And we do three things, essentially. We build software, so that's what we're going to talk about today, for fact-checking workflow, basically helping news organizations connect with audience on our messaging services. And then we have programs and research that we design to help news organizations counter misinformation and analyze it. So we're really focused on fact-checking and misinformation online. Right? And a few years back, around 2019, we started really focusing on this really obvious problem, which is the sort of enormous growth in messaging services, and they're great service. They help us communicate with family. It's very cheap. It's very private. But they also enabled new channels for misinformation to be distributed, right? And because those are encrypted, it is impossible for journalists to actually know really the quality or the quantity of misinformation that circulates there, and that's a big problem. Right? We all have like an uncle somewhere that is sending us some weird images, and there's no way that we can really sort of get a response from fact checkers or eyes on it, right? So that's a lot of many billion people, right? That's a lot of users. So what can we do for this, right? Well, the obvious thing is that we cannot break those encrypted messages. All we have to do is to ask users to sort of volunteer and forward some of that information that they see on those networks to third party that they trust, right? Their local newsrooms, their sort of civic organizations, or any third party really that they trust, to tell them if what they're seeing is true or not. And so we've designed this tool that we started again in 2019, Check Tipline, and it sort of overall this is a platform for newsroom fact checkers to be able to create conversational bots on messaging services. So WhatsApp, but not only WhatsApp, there's messengers, there's Viber, Twitter, and so on, and collect misinformation. So two things happen really. It's a two-way system. The audience send content, images, video. Sometimes they just ask questions to those newsrooms. And fact checkers, in return, they publish articles, fact checks directly on those networks, right? So suddenly, if we manage to have that input into those networks, then you can sort of counter misinformation and start circulating fact checks and understand what is going on there. So a little bit, I should add that another aspect of that is, of course, for all these news organizations to build audiences, right? These are new channels. People are using those communication services a lot every day, and so having a presence there, being able to present your services and build audiences is important for newsroom and for any media organization. So here is a little video of what this looks like. This is one tip line from Telemundo. And so I just trigger the tip line here, and there's a menu. We're on WhatsApp here. There are a few options. All of this is customizable, right? Like the newsrooms, they put their own tone, they put their own menu, they put their own options depending on the news cycle and their community. Here, I'm going to submit something to fact check. I'm going to ask a question, right? So I'm submitting some content. It's a little small, but I'm asking if a COVID-19 vaccine can alter DNA. And then we submit this, and then, it's basically check at that stage, take that query and looks for fact checks in the database of Telemundo. So we're looking for an answer to that question. And here we go. We have 3 different fact checks that Telemundo has published. So this is part of the collection of fact checks of Telemundo. And those are links. They will redirect me to an article online. Great. Now I'm just looking at a couple of other services here, just one which is very important, and we're really excited about that service, which is being able to publish newsletters directly on WhatsApp or on Messenger and so on. And so really that's a bit more than just answering the questions when people ask it, but it's really keeping those, that audience engaged and informed and sort of growing that audience on that new channel. So those newsletters are really a key part of that. What happened in the back, just a few words, when we see this, well, we know that every time there is a misinformation event, there are tons of content that gets produced. There are a lot of different images, a lot of different memes, different articles, videos, and they all sort of like, relay the same lie or the same misinformation in different forms. So when we deploy the tip line, it's important, check does the work of, we built algorithm that basically take and analyze that content, the semantics, the meaning of the questions that are asked, but also the text that is in the image, the text that is sort of the audio, analyze the audio in videos, convert all this and compare it, and then we build cluster. That's what we call similarity matching. It's really essential to help understand, to help journalists sort of understand what are the trends, right? On their own tip lines, they don't want to, if 5 types of messages, 5 images, and 3 articles are about the same, could be addressed by the same fact check, then we want those groups. So we build this to present that to journalists, and then we automate the response. If that fact check exists, we send it back directly to the user, which we just saw right before. Here, very quick, this is just a quick view of what journalists see, which is sort of an inbox. And you see the request there. That's the number of people that have asked for one fact checked. And so, sort of the overview here, to keep in mind, it's really a dashboard to help people, journalists, understand what's the demand for fact check, right? Based on what they see on the dashboard, then they can redirect resources, editorial resources, and produce fact checks to respond to that demand. So we started this in 2019 with one fact checker in India, and in 2022, this year, we have a lot more. So we're super excited about the traction that we're getting there. Definitely got some great response from the global community. We have 42 partners in about everywhere in 5 continents. And we've been working a lot with WhatsApp through their programs, through their certified fact-checking program to onboard those teams and get to basically design the tool that they need, right? We learn a lot from them, and this is sort of this is a sandbox. We're always improving and learning from them about what we should be building. So as we start seeing those, and we have all these individual tip line, there's always that question that comes back, which is, we have like 5 different fact checkers in Brazil. They have different audiences. They have those audiences have different level of education, different level of literacies, different bias, political interest, and so on. And so, if we really want to have a good view of the trends that exist, for example, in Brazil during an election, then, we should try to compound that data in some way, right? We should, what are the trends that are global? How do we understand if the misinformation, some patterns are traveling from one audience, one country to another, and so on. There's really interesting research questions that we can ask and hopefully answer with that data. And at the same time, at Meedan, we have those programs. We work with platforms a lot, and so they know what we're doing with the tip lines, and we keep getting questions around this, right? They keep asking us, what do we have about the Philippines? What do we have about Ukraine or the Brazil election? In some way, it's just, platforms have amazing ways of tracking what they know they can track. Once they know, they have to monitor a certain type of communication, then they can do this on their platform. But in many markets, they have no idea what it is, right? So they need the knowledge and the context, basically, to be provided by people that have the expertise to provide that, right? So basically, the fact checkers that are working on Philippines, they know about this. The folks that are in Europe at the time Ukraine happens, they can help identify what type of misinformation is circulating, and then passing it to the newsroom. So how can we, the question there is how can we productivize those into a service that can help basically distribute the data that we're gathering, and eventually help platform leverage that data. So that's what we came up with. It's called the shared feeds, and basically it's a way to support consortium, right? And which is an old, usual way of organizing around events, especially elections. And so what are those feeds? Well, they're just a group of fact checkers that manage Tipline, and they're going to share both the queries they get on each of their Tipline, but also the fact checks that they produce. And then we can sort of roughly package them in terms of a location and an event, right? There could be one about COVID, there could be one about a war when it happens, and of course elections, right? We've been working a lot on elections. So we started playing with that idea and basically designed a program, the first one we did, to prototype that idea with the Philippines last March, with basically, this was a consortium led by Rappler and Maria Ressa, and it was a consortium of 11 different newsrooms, and they were working really tightly together. What we helped them do there was really sort of, if one claim of if something seemed to be a little bit viral or distributed fast on one of the tip lines, all the other tip lines, all the other partners in that group would have an instant view in it. They would understand that misinformation is happening through one of the audience for any reason. Again, those audiences are not the same. And so because of that, they could sort of preemptively create fact checks and then serve those fact checks ahead of time to their own audience, so that if anyone asks the question, a question related to that same fact, then they get an answer immediately. Right? So it was really about sharing knowledge and making sure that the coverage in terms of fact-checking was sort of unified across those organizations. So that was the first thing that we did this year. And what we're working on now, and we're very excited about, is for this year's election in Brazil, of course, we're working with 5 great fact-checkers, Lupa AFP, Ausfados, Estado, and Comprova, with the same idea, right? We're going to help them sort of work with each other, and we know that those, again, they have different information coming in, and we're just going to enable them to learn from one another, create this sort of shared database, shared feed of fact checks that is representative of what's going on in Brazil during the election. But also, we're adding, that feed API, right? So it is more a way for representing all the work, the output that is produced by those fact checkers, and eventually broadcasting that, distributing that data to other third-party distributors, platforms, and so on, right? So that's the first use case for the distribution of that feed. We're super excited. This is something that we're working now. I cannot give too many details about it, but this is sort of a big change, and hopefully we'll be able to shine a light on it soon. But there are a lot of governmental, non-profit organizations that have deployed big bots. They're on WhatsApp. They have big accounts, millions of users, and they deliver services, right? Which are their own services, not fact-checking services. But during elections, some of those organizations, they're really interested in maintaining election integrity and participating to that effort, keeping their citizen, their audience sort of informed, right? So what we can do then is basically we created a service, a software service, to help integrate that shared feed to their own bot. And the workflow then is very simple. There are sort of new options in the bot, the WhatsApp bot of those organizations. They can ask questions, and then they get fact checks exactly in the same way that I demonstrated a little bit earlier. In exchange of that, the newsrooms that that have built that feed, they get queries, right? They get more information about what is trending, that helps them basically prepare more content. And of course, it gets them to reach out to new audiences, right? People that were not part of their own audience, but people that, users that were part of those organizations, third-party organizations audience. And then the second use case that is, we strongly believe in and are pushing really hard for is, platforms, right? So that's what we were talking about a little bit earlier. Those platforms, they have a need for context, right? They have a need to understand and consume information from specialists in certain locales, in certain countries. And so this is what we have, right? We have specialists that were working on the ground in Brazil, and they can help sort of provide content directly to content moderation teams, directly to civic integrity teams, for them to understand better what they should pay attention to. And then they can start tracking, and then they can start educating on it, and run their own policy. But at least they can provide, they can have sort of a better idea of what to look for. So this is a really big problem for platform, as we know. It's there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of it costs a lot of money, in fact, to do those problems, and a lot of communication issues too. And so, this is, we believe, like really an opportunity for monetizing the services, right? This important data that can be directly leveraged by global, platforms to make their service a bit better and less prone to misinformation. So we really believe in the value of this, and essentially, those, we think we can sell subscription, and we're working with some of those platforms discussing those how could those be consumed, and how to make them, the most useful to platform in order to monetize them. So quick TLDR on all of this. So messaging services, they're a unique opportunity for newsrooms to be able to create a new audience and connect with their existing audience on messaging service. You can collect data that no one has about the misinformation on those messaging services. And in turn, collaborating with other tip lines and sharing data with one another is sort of helping build data sets that are really powerful in terms of helping us understand what are the trends, right? How can we better fight misinformation? What should we pay attention, right? So collectively, all those organizations, through those tip lines, they have the opportunity to monetize that data, and this is a work in progress. This is a sandbox. It's not something that we figured out, but this is really what we're working on. I'm at time, so I'm gonna go over to this. Thank you so much. So this is work in progress. Again, we're looking for more designers, engineers, researchers, newsrooms. If you're interested, please reach out, and thank you so much, and have a great lunch.